Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy and I'm the director of the museum. And this week we're going to talk about one of the many big businesses that resided here in Batavia, especially around the turn of the 20th century, and one that was involved in one of our largest industries here, and that was agricultural manufacturing. So this week we're going to talk about the C.H. Bidwell Thresher Company, which designed bean threshers, which was their main equipment that they produced. And they were in the industrial area that Johnson Harvester and Wire Plows also operated here in Batavia. So we're going to go through the history of the company and the life of Charles Bidwell, who was the founder of the company, and its importance here to Batavia. Charles H. Bidwell was born in Albion, New York on September 10th, 1848. His father, Cyrus, was from Troy, New York, and his mother was a native of Vermont. Now, his mother died in 1872 when he was still a relatively young man, but his mother and her sister, Harriet Holly, better known as Aunt Harriet, who lived with them, were very much an influence in Charles's younger life, and it was through their influence that he went on to higher education, even though his father was against it and wanted him to remain a farmer. So Charles first went to Albion Academy, where he graduated, and then to the Brockport Normal School for 2 years. But he then had to come home after both his parents were experiencing poor health. In 1873, he married Luella Albion, and they had 4 children together. Bidwell had a liking for mechanical inventions and manufacturing that started very early on in his life. At the age of 10, he even made a small bean thresher, which he operated by himself, which would be a prelude of things to come. He was one of the first to introduce steam threshing in Orleans County and followed this successfully for 10 years, working for the Westinghouse Company, which was a steam machine manufacturing company, and this gave him the experience within the business of farm machinery and manufacturing that he would take on to his own business. While working there, he was working on and perfecting his patented bean thresher, and in 1881, he started his own manufacturing business of the machine on a small scale, and it proved to be the most practical bean thresher on the market. He continued his production in Albion until 1888, and then went to Medina, and in 1891, he organized a company called the Bidwell Bean Thresher Company. In 1893, he purchased the balance of the stock and became its sole proprietor. In 1900, after several years of growth, he chose to move his business to Batavia, mostly because of Batavia's railroad connections, which provided the best shipping accommodations in the region. He built a brick factory located on Swan Street. Unfortunately, that building has since been demolished. And at the time, the Bidwell bean thresher was well known among farmers who were using such machines, and it was esteemed to be one of the best products available. Gradually, Bidwell developed different and more complex machines, all of which generally centered around bean production. In 1904, Bidwell reincorporated the company into the C.H. Bidwell Thresher Company, where he retained only partial ownership, and he had other prominent investors from Batavia, including George Wyard of the Wire Plow Company, and Mrs. Adelaide Richmond Kenny, who was the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Dean Richmond. And his son, Holly Bidwell, was also an investor. Unfortunately, Charles Bidwell died on June 1st, 1905, at the age of 56, and without his leadership, the company struggled to prosper. And in 1910, the company went into receivership after several years of poor business methods. And though a new manager was chosen, the company had to close its doors in 1911, and the stockholders were forced to sell out. It was then bought by Dr. W.C. Gowanlock and his son W.S. Gowanlock of Warsaw, and they reopened it under the name of the Batavia Machine Company, but then changed it to the Climax Corporation. And under their leadership, the plant was again prospering. The company continued to produce and improve Bidwell bean harvester along with other machines. And Climax continued to operate until 1968, when it was sold to the Integrated Dynamics Corporation, which talked of big plans for the company, which included a new Bidwell bean harvester, which was to be, quote, the largest bean harvester ever made. Unfortunately, not much ever came out of this claim, and the leadership dwindled within the plant until it closed in 1974 and was then sold to the Chapin Manufacturing Works before it was eventually torn down. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Holland Office Museum's Artifact video series and learned a little bit more about the Bidwell Threshing Company and its impact here in Batavia during its time in creating bean threshers here. If you enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up or even subscribe to the channel as it helps us out a little bit, but also gets you notified when we do release new videos. And be sure to go check out the rest of our playlist of Artifact video series, as it's almost 140 videos at this point. So we're very proud of that, and give those a like too if you really do enjoy them, and take some time to go through the catalog. But as always, the best way to learn more about the artifacts we have here and the history of Genesee County is to stop by the museum for yourself and see it all in person. As we'll be happy to share even more information and stories than what's in these videos, and you can see the artifacts up close and personal. And if you're interested in supporting us in other ways, the best way to do that is to become a member of the museum, as the funding from that is a main component of what allows us to do programming like this, as well as the many other programs and events that we do host here at the museum.